Hong Kong Marathon is set to get underway for the first time since the implementation of the national security law. The government considers changing the law to fight discrimination against mainlanders. And the government is looking into extending the oath-taking requirement to all public officers. Good evening. The city is preparing for the pandemic-delayed Hong Kong Marathon. The race will begin in mere hours and will be the first large-scale sporting event in the territory since the national security law took effect last year. Police are expected to step up measures against what they call potential lone wolf attacks. However, they will not raise the terror level above medium risk. Jackie Lin has our top story.
Called off last year and twice postponed this year, the city will finally see its signature marathon event back in action. Under the pandemic, the number of participants has been slashed to 1/4 of the previous total at around 18,000. All runners have to be fully vaccinated and COVID screened. While the destination for all races will still be at Victoria Park, the starting point for the 10-kilometer race has been changed to the Western Tunnel Toll Plaza. People could cheer for runners, but they have to toe the social gathering limit of 4 persons. But racers will expect more company. This, as is understood, the force will deploy 2,000 to 3,000 officers at the field, citing concerns over lone wolf attacks. More traffic stops will be set up to carry out spot checks. As to what would happen to participants if they have political elements or slogans emblazoned on clothing, the organizer says those carrying a backpack or with special attire will be subject to security checks at the start area. The association added anyone who flouts the law will be barred from participating. If needed, the organizer will seek assistance from law enforcement agencies. Because of the race, road closures and traffic diversions will be implemented in phases starting tonight at 11:30 till around 4:30 on Sunday afternoon. Those affected include Argyle Street, Hennessy Road, Chengqing Tunnel, and Qing Kwai Highway. More than 280 bus and minibus routes will be diverted, shortened, or suspended. 8 MTR lines will provide earlier services, with the first train departing at 3 a.m. Jackie Lin, TV News.
The government is contemplating amending the law to combat discrimination against mainlanders. It is hoping the amendment can be completed during the early days of the next term of government. The Equal Opportunities Commission has submitted directional proposals to authorities on the matter. Caleb Love tells us more.
Amending current laws to protect mainlanders in Hong Kong have long been a topic of discussion in the city. In an effort to help with the cause, the Equal Opportunities Commission has advised the government to include intra-race discrimination in the Race Discrimination Ordinance. Ricky Chu, chairperson of the Anti-Discrimination Watchdog, said there are people that have a negative view towards their own country and race and who discriminate those of their same race.
I think based on some NGO survey, which one has been released only recently, and also based on the figures of complaints and inquiries that the EOC has been receiving in the past years, the problem of mainland Chinese being subject to discrimination, harassment, and verification in Hong Kong has been a long-lasting problem.
Chu also raised the issue of some restaurants putting up notices that read "No mainlanders" during the epidemic.
It's difficult at this stage to specify whether a certain behavior would definitely be an offense under the new law. It all depends on how the government take up EOC's proposal and how to convert those directional proposals into actual legislation. But the spirit of putting up such notice is definitely discriminatory. And it is this kind of behavior that we aim at controlling.
As for whether the legislation should also cover discrimination against different political views, Chu said no study on the topic has been conducted as of now. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
The chairperson of the Equal Opportunities Commission also commented on the new requirement for using the Leave Home Safe tracking app when entering government buildings. Ricky Chu admitted the new measure leads to separate treatment, but Chu said this is not something that falls within the scope of the city's current anti-discrimination laws. He said the government needs to consider alternatives for those who could not use the app. Meanwhile, the Education Bureau will also impose the same arrangement for government schools. Starting on the 1st of November, it will require non-students who enter the schools to use the Leave Home Safe app. The city reported 6 new imported COVID cases. All infected patients have been fully vaccinated. 5 carry a mutant strain. One of the patients traveled to Mongolia and South Korea. The 35-year-old tested positive after visiting a family member in hospital. Another case involves a 48-year-old sea crew member who was a close contact of an earlier infected case. The 3 others tested positive during quarantine. The Rambler Garden Hotel in Tsingyi will become the 3rd quarantine facility to accommodate newly arrived foreign domestic helpers in the city. Currently, foreign domestic helpers must undergo 3 weeks of quarantine at the Silka Hotel in Shunwan or the quarantine center in Penny's Bay. The new hotel would offer some 1,900 rooms. Agencies and employers can start making appointments for the helpers starting 9:30 a.m. Monday. Each room would cost $650 per night. Overseas, a study released in the US shows the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 children's vaccine is more than 90% effective at preventing symptomatic infections. And with more Americans getting booster shots, health officials there are considering updating the definition of fully vaccinated. Alan Buckner reports.
Advisors for the U.S. Food and Drug Administration will debate the evidence on a vaccine for 5 to 11-year-olds next week. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention will then make a final determination. Full-strength Pfizer shots are authorized for people 12 or older.
It's another step in the right direction for equipping physicians to be able to provide protection to children in order to move forward and get us out of this pandemic.
If approved, kids could start getting shots in early November, with the first in line fully vaccinated by Christmas.
People point out accurately that the rate of severe complications and death in children is much lower than adults. That's correct. But we know that children are not free from the harmful effects of this virus.
Meanwhile, the CDC says it's considering revising its definition of fully vaccinated as more Americans get booster jabs. It's estimated 2/3 of the population will become eligible for a booster in the coming months.
We have not yet changed the definition of fully vaccinated. We will continue to look at this. We may need to update our definition of fully vaccinated in the future. But right now, what I would say is if you're eligible for a booster, go ahead and get your booster.
The CDC recently approved the mixing and matching for boosters of its 3 approved vaccines, Pfizer-BioNTech, Johnson & Johnson, and Moderna. But Walensky says too many Americans are still unvaccinated.
We still have over 93% of our counties with high or moderate community transmission. Currently, around 64 million Americans remain unvaccinated, leaving themselves and their children, their families, their loved ones, and communities vulnerable.
Alan Buckner, TVB News.
COVID infections in the UK are on the rise, with an average of 47,000 new cases a day having been recorded over the past week. That's up 18% from the week before. But Prime Minister Boris Johnson was quick to stress this sudden surge does not mean another lockdown will be implemented.
It's very important that people do follow the guidance on general behaviour, on being cautious, on wearing masks in confined places where you're meeting people you don't normally meet, wear a mask, wash hands, ventilation, all that kind of thing.
Prime Minister, is a full lockdown this winter with stay-at-home advice, shops closing, is that out of the question?
I've got to tell you at the moment that we see absolutely nothing to indicate that's on the cards.
Johnson also said the government is monitoring the COVID situation and will keep all measures under constant review. Britain is relying almost exclusively on vaccines to keep the virus at bay during the autumn and winter months. In other news, court documents revealed that Alec Baldwin was told he was given a safe weapon to use on a film set. That came moments before the actor fatally shot a cinematographer during filming on Thursday. The on-set shooting death has reignited concern about the use of prop guns in Hollywood. Peter Caveas tells us more.
Alec Baldwin was handed what was described as a safe cold gun on the set of his movie Rust, which is being filmed in the U.S. state of New Mexico. But the prop gun contained live rounds when it was fired, according to details of the police investigation. The shot hit cinematographer Helena Hutchins in the chest and director Joel Souza, who's behind her in the shoulder. Hutchins died of her wounds and Souza was injured, but has since been released from hospital. Productions using prop guns have designated weapons handlers or armorers tasked with watching over the weapons on set.
An armorer's job essentially is to bring the weapons to set, make sure that the weapons security is taken care of, make sure the weapons safety is taken care of on set. Sometimes it also involves teaching the actors, showing actors how the weapons work, and generally working with other departments on weapons requirements.
The assistant director who handed Baldwin the prop gun did not know it contained live round.
I saw a few people trying to blame Alec Baldwin, and he is a producer on the movie, but he's an actor in the scene. And so whoever loaded that load and didn't know that it was dangerous, that person I think would be held liable. It would be an armorer.
Rock also believes prop guns are no longer needed.
I don't understand why we would still use blank rounds in a day when you can simulate them. If you have the money, you can simulate them well. If you took that money and put it into one visual effects person, you could have amazing muzzle flashes and all that stuff, and pose danger to no one.
The Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, which represents 160,000 actors and other media professionals, said it would also investigate to understand how to prevent such a thing from happening again. Production on the movie Rust has been shut down for the time being. The local sheriff's department said no charges had been filed and the investigation remained open. Peter Cavers, TVB News.
Saudi Arabia outlined plans to reach zero net emissions by 2060 and more than doubled its annual target to reduce carbon emissions. The country is the world's largest oil exporter. Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman set out details of the Nationally Determined Contributions, or NDCs, at the Saudi Green Initiative ahead of next week's COP26 climate conference in Scotland. NDCs are goals for individual states under global efforts to prevent average temperatures from rising 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. Saudi Arabia said it aims to eliminate 278 million tons of carbon emissions a year, up from the previous target of 130 million tons. However, the chief executive of oil giant Saudi Aramco, Amin Nasser, said the hydrocarbon industry should not be demonized. Nasser, also speaking at the Saudi Green Initiative, said the focus should be on making use of both existing and new energy sources. He added that more investment is needed to ensure adequate spare capacity of crude oil, or else there could be an economic crisis. He stated that the current spare capacity is declining fast, and its usage will increase as economies begin to open up as the global pandemic situation stabilizes. A volcano on the Spanish island of La Palma continues to spew out hot lava more than a month after it first erupted. Scientists say the eruption could last for 3 months. About 7,500 people were forced to flee the area as the lava destroyed homes and ruined livelihoods. But most of the 85,000 people on the island are unaffected by the eruption. La Palma is part of Spain's Canary Islands off northwest Africa. Its economy is based mainly on tourism and banana plantations. Back locally, the government is looking into extending the oath-taking requirement to all public officers. Secretary for Education Kevin Young said he is considering whether social workers and speech therapists in aided schools will also need to take the oath. Sharon Tang has that story.
Many civil servants, including teachers of government schools, have already pledged their allegiance to the SAR and the Basic Law. Education Chief Kevin Young said today his bureau is looking into extending the requirement to teachers in aided schools, and he believes other government departments are thinking along the same line for public offices.
特別喺教育呢個範疇。
Young said when we look at the education sector, there are also other professions involved in schools, such as social workers and speech therapists. He added these people are always in contact with students. Meanwhile, starting the next academic year, new teachers of aided schools must be tested on their knowledge of the Basic Law.
What we are now doing is implementing a test for the new teachers, basically new teachers, and also for teachers who hasn't that qualification before. When they change schools, they also have to go through the Basic Law test. in doing so, we will also make reference to the practice now for civil servants. As you all know, the Civil Service Bureau is now considering also doing a test on the national security law. Depending on their outcomes, we will also make a necessary adjustment to the test for teachers, I think maybe next year or so.
Young added there will be at least one basic law test for teachers at the end of the year or the beginning of 2022. The education chief also said the vaccination rate among teachers has now exceeded 90%. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
3 members from centralist political party Third Side will run for the Legislative Council election in December. Among those running is Chairman Tik Chi-yun. Meanwhile, the Hong Kong Association for Democracy and People's Livelihood said no members have expressed an interest in joining the race. Tik said that it's unfortunate there is no ADPL representative in the election. He added that it's important for the non-pro-establishment camp to fight for the most number of seats in the coming elections. The nomination period for the upcoming LegCo election begins next Saturday. And let's take a look at the weather before we go. It will be mainly cloudy with sunny periods in the afternoon. Temperatures will range between 19 and 25 degrees. And that's the news. Thanks for watching.